Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week, as always, R8 Devin and Philip Bargil. Week 28 was a great round of Ligue 1 football, and in a weekend where streaks were extended and some were ended, it's good to know that maybe things aren't quite as one-sided as they seem. But before we talk all about that, here are this week's headlines. A punchless Nice got Ligue 1's weekend off to a start. The absence of Hatem Ben Arfa underscored once again as Bastia's trip to the Riviera saw the Corsican side all but secure their safety with a 2-0 win on Friday evening. On Saturday, Montpellier also took a big step towards survival as Kevin Berrigo notched a goal and an assist to propel the host to a 3-0 victory over the visiting Lille. In the multiplex, an early goal from inform Majid Waris was all that was needed as visiting Lorient held off Troyes 1-0. Jimmy Cabot getting the assist on his return to the Stade de l'Aube. A pair of penalties and the dismissal of Sheikh Ndoye late in the first half marked a fiery encounter in Brittany as Guingamp, still mired in a relegation fight, may regret dropping a point to Angers. The match finished 2-2. That saw the visitors notch a point for the first time this month thanks to Billy Keofonfon's spot kick 10 minutes from time. Real late drama was in France's southwest, however, as Toulouse looked set to be getting a badly needed 3 points against the visiting Rennes, only for a pair of late goals to undo the hosts. Ousmane Dembele played the scorer and provider in the space of 3 minutes to make the final margin 2-1. In a matchup of two sides heavily stocked with their winter arrivals, host Reims thumped Bordeaux 4-1. Thierry Bafuma scoring and assisting to aid the club in pulling 4 points above 18th place Gazalec Ajaccio, whose match against Marseille was rescheduled for next midweek just before Paris Saint-Germain's Champions League match. Host Nantes and Monaco grounded out a somewhat inevitable scoreless draw in Sunday's early kickoff as Nantes stretched their unbeaten run to 17 games ahead of Wednesday's Cup quarter-final. Monaco, meanwhile, are beginning to fashion their own with 3 wins and true draws in their last 5 league matches. Caen reasserted themselves as a European contender, a 2-1 victory against a weary Saint-Etienne, their second running. The 3 points taking the Normandy club into 4th, pending Nantes' rescheduled trip to Bastia. The result of the weekend, however, was undoubtedly Lyon's 2-1 victory over Paris Saint-Germain at the Stade de Lumière. Goals from Maxwell Cornet and Sergi Darder are enough to see the hosts hold on despite Lucas's second half strike. In Ligue 2, most of the contenders could only draw, bar Red Star. The Parisian club's victory over Nimes gives them a 4-point cushion over Le Havre. Midweek, the Coupe de France springs back into action. Ajaccio are travelling to Lorient, Nantes visit Sochaux, and Saint-Etienne are hosting Paris Saint-Germain, with Marseille away to the amateur side, Granville, on Thursday. And that's all for this week's news. Keep yourself up to date on a regular basis by heading on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and following us on Twitter at GFFN. Start this week with talking about the streak that is finally over. Paris Saint-Germain were undefeated in Ligue 1 for 36 games, going back to the 15th of March 2015 when they lost to Bordeaux. But last night at the Parc Olympique Lyonnais, their quest for an unbeaten season came to an abrupt end. Lyon won to win in a fabulous display. But Philip, what does it feel like to finally lose in the league for what seems like an age?
Oh, you're loving this, aren't you? Yeah, it's it's extremely disappointing. I saw on Twitter the marks or the grades that L'Équipe and Le Parisien gave to each player. In Lyon, you had no player who was rating below 6, and for PSG, there was no player who was rated above 4. So that basically tells you anything you need to know. From top to bottom, yeah, very, very poor performance. And the same thing that happened at Marseille happened last night, i.e. the midfield trio was not playing well at all. I think this is mainly due to the personnel and not the quality of the players. Thiago Motta, I'm not so sure it can be trusted for big occasion games like these when he's basically surrounded by Ligue 1 players. Not to for no disrespect to Ligue 1, but Rabiot and Stambouli are just were just completely torn apart by the Lyon's midfield trio, which were ridiculously, extraordinarily good. Ferry in particular, Darder. That goal by Darder, it was like Dennis Bergkamp against Newcastle a couple of seasons back, and it was against Thiago Silva. Just unbelievably good Lyon midfield, and they were pressed just like they were against Marseille, but there was no maturity on the pitch. There was no Verratti on the pitch. So basically, you had Lyon playing probably their best football of the season. I'm sure you'll comment on that, Eric. And play against players that just were not capable to cope with that. So you may have Ibrahimovic up top who was at his nonchalant best. It was like watching him play last season. Thiago Silva he did try not to look too ridiculous, but he did look ridiculous on Darder's goal. David Luiz didn't have a good game. Van der Veer was absolutely shocking for the opening goal. And to me, Blanche shouldn't have put Pastore on at the beginning of the second half. We'll probably talk about subs later, but to me, should have put Matuidi on straight on. And that would have changed the game because Lyon was still very comfortable in midfield in the second half. So there was this, when Lucas scores, there was this kind of reaction. They probably got some kind of hairdryer from Blanc at half time. But to me, it was just Pastore playing a bit more up top, leaving Rabiot and Thiago Motta behind. So basically, PSG switching to 4-2-3-1, which never really worked for them. I mean, in Liga, it didn't really fit. I mean, it was 4-4-2 under Ancelotti, and Blanc was always 4-3-3. And it just didn't work. And whereas if you replace Rabiot or Stambouli, it doesn't matter. They were both bad, for lack of a better word. By Matuidi, it would have changed things, in my opinion. Of course, in hindsight, it's easy to say that.
Eric, let's talk about that midfield. We've mentioned it before that sometimes without the likes of Matuidi or Verratti starting, it lacks something a little bit. And I thought when Pastore came on, he did add a little bit of something. Is that really a worry? They were really dominated and lacked a little bit creativity in that middle of the park?
I mean, absolutely. I think Stambouli is a functional player, and I think that he's the kind of player you can bring into a match to close something out if you have a close result, and perhaps in a cup tie or something. But I don't think he has much creative nous going forward, and I don't think that he's the type of player who is of the caliber needed to have any significant role in PSG's play. Rabiot, I think, again, he's 20 years old. There's still promising signs there, but I think that his style, while it may be attack-minded, is still a bit too impetuous. He's, for me, not, just trying to run at defenders, and he lacks the technique and the capability to do that, and it doesn't. His style of play in that regard doesn't necessarily fit in very well with the likes of Cavani and Ibrahimovic, who are a bit more slower-footed. So he takes off on a run and runs nowhere because no one's with him. That being said, Blanc's hand is forced a little bit here, with the absence of Verratti and Di Maria and the fixture congestion that PSG are suffering. So it's hard to fault Blanc in this instance for this midfield, but at the same time, if Pastore is fit enough to play 45 minutes, why isn't he on from the start? I understand that he's recovering from injury himself, but as we rightly said, the difference that he made coming into the match, I think that, even being a Lyon fan and wanting to hope for the best, I really don't see this result being the same were Pastore to have played 70, 80, 90 minutes, at least from the off.
Philip, you mentioned it there, Eric, very briefly that Di Maria was obviously missing, and Cavani was a little bit absent, other than a couple of angry moments from the Uruguayan. Did they really miss the creativity of the Argentinian in the side in a game that really needed that extra impetus between the midfield and the attack?
To me, that wasn't even the problem. We had we had the creativity when the ball was able to, when PSG had the ball, when PSG were able to get the ball and stay on the ball in Lyon's half, which happened not very often last night. And to me, it was more about keeping the ball and getting in to the front three, or rather the front four in the second half, and we saw none of that. So to me, it wouldn't even have mattered had we had Pastore or Di Maria. It just needed more strength in that midfield trio. I was having this discussion with a friend. We're comparing Barcelona from this season from 2011, when they won the Champions League, and how their midfield is a bit weaker this season than back in 2011. The point being, without the midfield, basically the defenders were extremely exposed. So Thiago Silva, David Luiz, I'm not, I don't think that they were shockingly bad. Like I read on a few Twitter accounts today. It was again the lack of protection, and when this midfield trio has the ball, it has to protect it, it has to go forward with it. And it just did not happen. Whereas Lyon were extremely, as they had an amazingly organized pressing style. It almost looked like a square when you were looking at from up top, with Ferry on the right, Dade on the left, the wing backs doing their jobs. Even Mapu Yangambira played well. It just, everything just clicked. And to me, it was that midfield trio that is the key, and that's often positions that gets overlooked for just being there. But if you don't have that, you could have Di Maria, Pastore, but I don't think it would have been that much of a difference. It probably would have ended 2-2, but I don't know. I just don't think so.
It's difficult to tell in hindsight, isn't it? I think you make an excellent point there, that it seemed like they never really had a shield at any point, PSG, and it exposed the likes of David Luiz, who when he does get a little bit nervous, tends to get a bit rushy and tries to close down attacking midfielders and leaves gaps in behind him, and then everyone was nervous in that PSG backline. But I'll let you talk a little bit about Lyon's superb performance, really, Eric, where they really put the cat amongst the pigeons, and for a good half an hour in that first half, they looked like they'd put PSG really on the back foot, didn't they?
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, most teams in Ligue 1, and even in the Champions League, with the exception of Real Madrid, have sort of tried to sit back and absorb PSG's pressure to some extent. Whereas with Lyon, we saw them play what was nominally a 4-3-3, but often I think it ended up being functionally more of a 4-1-5. Gonalons sat and protected the defense, but Darder and Ferry were really aggressive from the off, getting in and trying to run out the defenders with the ball. Cornet and Ghezal and Lacazette were drifting all over the place. Lacazette was tracking back and doing a lot of good work defensively, something which we don't see from him on a weekly basis. So I think well done to him, not only creating that goal, but doing a lot of good work to start counterattacks and break up PSG's possession and rhythm. And some better finishing from Ghezal. I think the result could have been perhaps even more emphatic, a 3-1 or a 4-1, were the Algerian to have had his shooting boots on a little bit more. But that's the thing. PSG aren't seeing this sort of play on a week in, week out basis, and it's taken them aback. This aggressivity, this aggressive style with a mobile attacking line. Most teams in Ligue 1 don't play a 4-3-3, and B, don't play one that's so willing to mix it up and get in amongst their midfield and really attack them. They try to, other Ligue 1 teams try to play off PSG and allow them to sort of counter the slow-footedness of Cavani and Ibrahimovic, but then you get a ball over the top and Berratti, Di Maria runs onto it, and there's the opportunity created. With Di Maria out of the side, that wasn't an option, and Berratti out of the side, that wasn't an option on the night, and PSG didn't really seem to show up with a plan B. And we saw this high pressing from opposition be really effective from Marseille. That match about a month ago, the work from Bounassar and George Kevin and Kudu in that match like I said about a month ago was really integral into unsettling PSG. And while they did get the result in the Le Classique, it did show, I think, a bit of a blueprint for how the champions can be got at. And I think that if Chelsea were paying attention to this, they will have taken a lot of heart to think about playing perhaps a similar formation, maybe using Eden Hazard and at the top of their formation instead of Diego Costa to try and get at the midfield and drag players out of position, because I think Lyon really laid down a serious marker in terms of not only their tactical plan, but in terms of their effort and willingness to work, and to show that despite a nominal gap in talent, if teams set up correctly against the Parisians, then they really can be got at, especially without Di Maria and Verratti on the side.
That's the thing, though, because this is the second time this happened this season. So the first time was at Marseille, and this is the second time, and Lyon having a better squad, and probably, I'm not going to say more willingness, because the Marseille players did everything they could. To me, more raw talent. This was basically one of a few games where PSG players can say, okay, this is a challenge. We have to rise to it to show that we can stay the whole season unbeaten, and it just did not happen. It didn't happen, of course, because of the absentees, which were 4. That's quite a lot. It's almost half the starting lineup. But also, you didn't get this kind of revolt from the big guys, from Zlatan, from Thiago Motta, from Thiago Silva. You didn't get that feeling of we can't lose. I mean, we have to stay the whole season undefeated. And I think this is what is the most disappointing, is that, yes, Blanc maybe should have done things differently, but to me, the revolt was just missing. And Lyon had it almost a bit too easy in the second half, because not much happened in the last 20 minutes, which is pretty bad in such a game. Basically, the whole game was in the first half, and I actually thought that PSG's goal was extremely fortunate. It came from sheer determination from Lucas and Pastore, yes, but I think it was extremely fortunate. One thing I would like to ask you, Eric, is this, well, first of all, is this Lyon's best performance of the season?
Yes, without question. I mean,
okay.
Thinking about this 11 on paper, I mean, you're missing, I would argue that Tolisso, Jallet, and Umtiti have been probably Lyon's 3 best outfield players this season.
And they all missed out.
Yeah, to be missing the 3 of them via injury and suspension, I was all set for a repeat of the December match. So it was, what, 5-1, 5-0? Something in that order. I just didn't see it getting done. I mean, Darder hasn't shown much of this type of performance this season. He was fantastic. Yeah. Cornet was great. I mean, Ghezal the same. His finishing obviously could have been better, but he still did well to drag the defense out of position. I was frankly stunned by the result and the performance. I wasn't watching the match live, but I was checking in on it on Twitter at work, and just one goal goes in. it's 2-0 at halftime. I was incredibly taken aback.
And so this was probably not the best lineup of personnel, but the best performance. So where would you put Fekir in that formation?
I still think Leon should go back to the Diamond 4-4-2 when he comes back. My ideal Leon lineup with everybody healthy, Mtiti would come back into the side. So would Jallet. I'd have Tolisso replace one of Ferry or Dardere, and I'd have Fekir behind Cornet and Lacazette.
Mm. And there were quite a few. The final question, then I'll leave you alone. There were quite a few people, including Pierre Menez, who's a French pundit, saying that Valbuena would not have fitted in that style of play last night. Because you had one-touch passes and stuff like that, and people were saying that Valbuena needs to handle the ball, he takes too many touches, blah blah blah. Now I don't particularly agree about that. I think Valbuena can play one touch and would have played fine to me. I think, even though Rachid Ghezal did have a great game except for his final touch, but some things never change. So I mean, do you agree with that or not?
Yeah, I'm not sure how Valbuena fits into this. I think that the purchase of him and the purchase of Claudio Bovu happened because they are players who have a name, who have a reputation in Ligue 1, and they had an availability that fit within Lyon's budget. They were a means to strengthen an attack that needed strengthening after the departure of Angie. And I think that, and the injury to Fekir as well, and I think that it made sense for Lyon to chase those names. Those were players who were ambitious, who were excited about a Champions League campaign, but they both, Bovu again is now departed, but I think like him, Valbuena is a bit of a tactical misfit. He's great at drawing fouls and he's great at being a creative force, but I don't think, for this 4-3-3 to work currently with Fekir out, I don't think that Valbuena delivers enough of a goal threat. Having both he and Ghezal on the wings, I don't think that there's enough of a scoring threat from either of them to make defenses really honor them as someone who's going to be dangerous cutting inside. That's why I would prefer to keep playing Cornet with one of Ghezal or Valbuena on the opposite flank. Personally, I don't think that Valbuena can score enough to make defenders honor his shot cutting inside.
It is an interesting point. I personally, back on Fekir, I think what we saw from Ghezal is similar to what I remember Nabil Fekir doing really excellently against Caen, which is one-on-one against defenders, and I think he might be quite good cutting inside, much like Ghezal did at the weekend. But I must say that I mentioned the wingers last week, that they were. I thought they were pretty poor, but I thought both of them were excellent this week. I thought especially Ghezal, even though, like you mentioned, he didn't have his shooting boots on, but he wanted to apply the pressure, and he wanted, when he was on the ball, he wanted to attack his fullback, which is what you want wingers to do, especially in those forward positions. And I thought it was excellent, as well as it was good to see Dardere really put in a performance as well. His goal was wonderful.
Does he ever has his shooting boots on? I mean, I don't want to be
that might be the question
there, but it's. I mean, do you see some actual talent in his finishing? Because I really think he's extremely clumsy, and most of the shots he's taking are not sufficiently good to beat Ligue 1 keepers. But he's fine. He's fine at creating it, running at plays and stuff. But to me, it's a bit like all smoke with no fire. With Ghezal.
I mean, there were a couple moments. There was a moment, maybe like 20, maybe the 20th minute or so, when Dardere could have slipped in Cornet, for example. That there could have been a little bit better sharing of the ball and in terms of taking chances for Lyon. But I think Ghezal, from where he was a year ago, I'm thinking about that match against Marseille in the Velodrome where he was substituted before halftime. He's really come on in leaps and bounds. I think we are seeing him reach his ceiling, and finishing will continue to be an issue, but I think he can continue to be a serviceable player I don't know that he necessarily fits into a Lyon starting 11 for them to have the ambitions that they want to have to, be in second place, to progress in Europe and the like. But he's certainly developed impressively under Genesio. I don't want to hammer this match too much, but
Yeah.
Philip, I want to throw something back at you. The one personnel change that perhaps could have been made prior to the match would have been, for me, to start Marquinhos and Kurzawa at fullbacks. And there's 2 points here. One, I think that would we have seen as much involvement from Ghezal were he to be tasked with a little bit more in terms of defensive work? And the pace and the energy and the drive of Kurzawa, I think, would have kept him a little bit more occupied had Kurzawa started. And secondly, on the opposite flank, I'm really a fan of Marquinhos at right back. He's very pragmatic and doesn't give up much in the way of mistakes. I would have rather seen him over Vanderbilt, particularly given Vanderbilt's slip leading to Cornet's goal. Would you have wanted to start one or either of those?
I do agree. Actually, on Maxwell, I don't think would have made much difference. Maxwell goes forward as well. Kurzawa is probably more energetic. Vanderbilt got killed in the press today for the first goal, and so of course they were all saying, "Well, oh, he can come back anytime he wants." I think it's a bit of a shame to treat Vanderbilt in such a way that for Champions League we play Marquinhos, but for small time Ligue 1 we play you against Lyon.
Small time Ligue 1.
Sorry.
Small time Ligue 1.
I'm just I'm
not bitter.
I can't.
Yeah. I'm exaggerating as I usually do. And I do reckon that Marquinhos would have done a better job than Vanderbilt, but in hindsight again. But it's a great couple of points there, and it does raise the questions whether the fullbacks need to be more probably not in Vanderbilt's case be more challenged, but maybe Maxwell probably should move and probably let Kurzawa play those kinds of games. But that's all down to Blanc. I'm not overly critical of team selections made before the game, but during the game you can see how things evolve and could make some valid changes, especially at half time. This is where I'm more critical of him, but from the starting lineup, I mean, okay, I mean, there's a midfield trio was weak, but other than that, I don't really have any massive complaints about Maxwell.
That's fair enough. I think we'll leave that game for now. I think we'll talk it to death if we risk it doing any more. So we'll move on to a team that have continued their unbeaten run as it goes to 17 games. Nantes were back in action this weekend after having their game against Bastia postponed in week 27. They drew 0-0 with second place Monaco to maintain that unbeaten run in all competitions. Eric, how good have Le Canaries been this season? Especially.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying, especially recently. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think they've really exceeded expectations. I mean, for me, looking at what they lost in the off season, the likes of Gilles Bogie, obviously, Valentin Rongier being injured, Vigneault, Bessat, they were really decimated in terms of the players that they left. And yeah, they spent some money in the summer to bring players in, the likes of Sig Thorson. I think that displays a little bit more ambition in terms of money spent. Guillaume Guillet is someone who's won a fair amount of caps for Belgium in the past, has been brought in. The likes of Sabali and Lanjani on loan have been surprisingly decent. Leo Dubois, the youth product's done really well coming in. Likewise, Wilfred Moembe coming up from Ligue 2. Not down to any one particular player, but these players are just top to bottom, really doing fantastically well and buying into this team ethos. I mean, Michel Desakarian has deservedly earned a reputation as a hard manager to work under, but his pressing game is just so mesmerizingly effective. And now that he's got these fullbacks who are perhaps a little bit of an upgrade on what they had last season. Issa Sissoko was the other departure. and they've got in terms of the fullbacks, that is. Now that he's got the likes of Sabali and Moembwe and Dubois playing, I think that there's just a little bit more danger on the flanks, and that's allowing a little bit more space for the opposition. Yacine Bamu and Emiliano Sala are really starting to step it up, and we weren't seeing a really talented, tremendous goal scorer last season. And Bamu and Sala, they've each only got 4 goals, but they're chipping in a little bit more, and their physicality and their own work rate, I think, is impressive as well. So yeah, it's really coming together, and it's a team that's more than the sum of its parts, and it's really tremendous. And I think more than last season, also they're perhaps a little bit more attractive to watch as well. They weren't that great to watch last season. It was a little bit more Sturm und Drang, if you will. But
the worst attack of the league, weren't they?
Right. Yeah. But I think that the fullbacks are a little bit more impressive this season, and I think that they've really done well. Nkudu was another departure in the off season. It's fantastic how he's gotten these players on side and defending as well, and if not better, considering their losses. Kian Hansen, they lost a lot of players from last season.
They keep coming out of the woodworks. There's that many that did been lost, but I think you mentioned some good points there, Eric. I think especially Guillaume Gillet, the signing from Anderlecht. I think it was in January they bought him because I watched him in the Europa League this season against Monaco and against Spurs, and I saw him last year against Arsenal as well in the Champions League, and I thought that was a terrific signing. I mean, at 31 years old, you mentioned he's had a few caps for Belgium, but he's a good solid presence in the middle of the park, and he doesn't mind putting himself about a bit. He doesn't mind getting involved in attacks. He can score goals. He can create goals. He can be that shield in front of the defence when they need it. And he's, like you say, there's a fair few number of younger players at Nantes at the moment, and having that leadership in the middle of the park really is a rock to sort of build around for those young players and for them to look towards. I think that was an excellent piece of business by De Zakarian to get him in. And you mentioned Sigthorsson briefly there. That kind of signing looked like it was a bit of a shambles in the summer, but now it's starting to look like it was a good idea because he started scoring goals. He's starting to create opportunities at least. And Salah and Bamu have got a few goals themselves. They probably still need, if they're wanting to go for Europe really hard, I think they need to maybe get a few more goals out of the likes of the forwards and get Bedoya involved a little bit more. Although he has been better than I've seen him in previous seasons, but
still lots of progress has been done going forward.
Yeah.
It's not only all the 0-0s, but Nantes have scored 29 goals last season, and with 27 games gone this season, they're already on 26, which is not great because it's still one less than a goal per game, but it's still a massive progress from last season, where Valdemir Kita, the chairman, went basically all out to try and get some creativity in the side, which did finish 14th, which is quite low, really, given that they weren't that troubled by relegation.
Well, you can see where the real positive is their defence. I mean, like Eric mentioned, 24 goals is conceded this season is only beaten by Lille's 23 and Paris Saint-Germain's 15, but I want to talk to you, Philip, about how surprising Nantes' run has been so far, and whether you think they could challenge, maybe not for the Champions League spots, but certainly for that Europa League sort of positions.
I'm not sure they're ready for that, but I think De Zakarian had a good run end of November, beginning of December, mostly with 0-0 draws. It has to be said. But it is working because they haven't lost in the league since the end of November, which was November 21st, and I think that's 12 games without losing, which is ridiculously amazing. So I think he did build it from the back, and when you watch the game against Monaco it was yesterday afternoon, it wasn't last night. They really tested Subasic a lot in that game. You could be forgiven for saying, not versus Monaco finished 0-0, not much happened, but not really attacking there. It was very cohesive attacking. It really put Subasic to task, and I think that's how the Attaquant probably wanted it. You start from the back, you stop losing, and you try and win the game with a bit of luck up front. And I think it is working. And who knows? Maybe it's not that's going to finish the second half of the season unbeaten. Who knows?
Well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? I think it's a sign of any team that really want to improve. If you've got a solid defence, you can always build off something like that. And even if you're nicking games 1-0, you're winning games, you're earning 3 points. It's the same as other people. So, we do want to mention quickly, Eric, that it's been mentioned before that Michel Desakarian has done a really good job, but his contract is up in the summer, and there's not been any talks as of yet whether to extend it. Surely they've got to keep him on side for the future with the progress he's made.
Well, the way I would look at this is that, yes, Zakarian has done well with what he has, limited means, transfer ban, playing a very sound defensive style. But, perhaps can we look at the acquisitions of the likes of a Sigthorsson, the likes of a GA, as being the seeds of a real change to where not used to be. Now, let's face it, this is a team who's been very historically successful, being in the Champions League, winning titles. Again, not in the last decade. They've been sort of in and out of the Liga and Ligue 2, changing managers quickly. But perhaps, not want to aim a little bit higher and return to their glory days. I mean, what we've been seeing all season in Ligue 1 is sort of a real vacuum, a real void, beyond PSG and to a lesser extent Monaco, who again, their resources are simply too great to contend with. But again, as long as there still is that third Champions League spot available for teams in Liga, I think any team with some amount of means would be foolish not to want to try and spend to try and progress and push on to that. I mean, look at the spending the likes of Rennes did in the summer. Look at, that's a Bordeaux have been bringing quite a few players as well. There's been a real push among a lot of these upper mid-table teams to make themselves the favorite for that third spot. And not with the great home atmosphere that they enjoy and the historical success that they've had as a club, I think could easily be a real contender for that. I mean, let's face it, if they win their match in hand, I believe they do go into third place. A trip to Bastia is the rescheduled match for the 9th. And that's not an easy trip, but if they get 3 points from that, they're in third place. And, they've got matches against a lot of their direct rivals. They take a trip to Rennes, they take a trip to Lyon before the end of March, and they've got Nice, Caen, and PSG to play as well. So I think that, well, yes, we should acknowledge the success that Zakarian has had. Perhaps the thinking from is that he's looking bigger picture than this. And, for as well as Zakarian has done, is he really the manager that can really bring Nantes up to that next level, to be a team that's in Europe year in, year out, to be up there with the likes of a Lyon or a Saint-Etienne, someone that's in the top 5 or 6 most given years. And I think that given the resources that are naturally available to that club in terms of their support, that should be the club's aim. And if they don't feel that Zakarian is the man to take him forward, regardless of his success in tough circumstances, I can't really fault them too much for that.
It is an interesting point to think in those kind of means, and hopefully he gets another chance. But you never know with football nowadays, especially with teams always looking on for the forward. And like you mentioned, with a team like that, hopefully with the fan base that they can really gather in that city, can move on forward. We'll move on to the action that happened on Thursday night, as France's coefficient took a little bit of a pounding as both Marseille and Saint-Etienne fell out of the Europa League. It was an evening full of up and downs for both teams, but we'll start with Les Verts, Philip. they suffered real heartbreak at the end. I mean, it looked like they'd stuck through with that Bielsa goal, but a sucker punch at the end from Basel really just knocked them out, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. So basically what happened, Basel were through from a free kick, so they were 1-0 up to, it was 3-3 on aggregates, so Basel were going through on the away goal rule, which I quite like, actually. Otherwise, every time would go to extra time and penalties. Bielsa equalises a rather wholly defended free kick by Bal. I think it's in the 88th minute, something like that. So Bal takes off his shirt. Everybody goes to the away fan, absolute bedlam in Switzerland. And then the most shocking piece of defending from Lever, and Bal scores the second goal and goes through. It really is quite surprising when you see how not too badly Saint-Etienne have defended. I haven't watched every single game, but usually Perrin, Bielsa, they're not bad defenders. And to see that kind of mistake, I mean, you don't see that kind of mistake very often in Ligue 1, actually, full stop. So it really is quite infuriating, given the amount of effort Galtier put into this competition to get through to the knockout to get through to the knockout stages, to have a good group stage campaign, and it really feels like they're falling to the first hurdle, because Bâle weren't very good, I thought, on the whole over the two legs. The first goal was a set piece, wonderfully taken set piece, of course, which you can do nothing about. But I didn't feel that Bâle was that superior to Saint-Etienne, and it's just a shame, because they could have progressed, and they would have entered the draw against Seville, which is a game they probably would have lost, but it still would have been good fun to have a French side in the round of 16 of the Europa League.
And
but sadly, it was not to be.
It has certainly been good for the coefficient as well. But after Eric mentioned briefly, what wasn't mentioned by Philip then is obviously Valentin Isaric was sent off. They go and score a goal. Then Basel have Bryson Bolo sent off. So you're thinking, 10, we're back in front, we're back even in players, and then it's that classic thing in Europe where a lapse of concentration at any moment against any side can see you out, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a shame because, as Phil rightly said, Saint-Etienne's defense has been great all season, but since Perrin's injury, I mean, Bielsa and Pogba have been playing just pretty much every match week in and week out, and you have to wonder, how that's really finally starting to take a toll on them. These players are just, they're still alive in the cup as well. They've got the quarterfinal against PSG on Wednesday. These players have just been, at it week in and week out, and you have to think that it's perhaps just finally caught up to them.
And it was such a shame, especially like say there was the moment where we all thought they were through, and then the sucker punch at the very end, like I say, saw Basel through. But
that's 14 matches that Saint-Etienne have played since the start of the year.
Wow, so
that's a lot.
Yes, that's a very lot.
That's a lot.
That's it's at least 7 a month, isn't it? Which is at least almost
8 in February, 6 in January. Yeah, that's unbelielievable.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Especially since France is supposed to have a winter break.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an English team that would have had more than that, but I don't think there is, other than maybe Manchester United might have been close, maybe. But especially for a French club, ridiculous amount. So it's a shame that really caught up on them. But another team that were involved, Marseille, Philip, they got back into it with Michy Batshuayi. They looked like they were really taking the task to Bilbao, but again, late on, another sucker punch sees them out as well.
Yeah, well, on that matter, we discussed the chances of both French sides last week, and we're both more confident about Saint-Etienne progressing than Marseille. Marseille lost a home game, against Bilbao at the Vélodrome, as they usually underperform on home turf this season, but play extremely quite good football away from home, and it was only 10 minutes from time that Bilbao equalised. So it's surprising, yes and no, because you've got Marseille being good away from homes this season, but also you do expect that side to not really compete with Bilbao. I mean, I know I was predicting Bilbao to win 2-0 on the night, which would have been 3-0 on aggregate. So it is also quite a shame for Marseille. But just like Saint-Etienne, this squad is just so small, it can't really compete with Europe as well as all the other competitions. So I think it's probably a good thing all said and done. I mean, it's not like Michel was gave as much effort as Galtier. He said, "Yeah, we're going to try and do go as far as possible." I don't think that anyone was. I'm not going to say he's not bothered by the competition, but it seemed to be a bigger deal to Galtier than Michel.
And Eric, it was the frustrating thing about it was Bilbao had a couple of players missing for that one, and it just felt maybe like it was a little bit of an opportunity missed for Marseille.
Yeah, I mean, missing Naki Williams in particular, I think he's a really important young player for the team. But again, this team's always going to defend well, and if Marseille can't hang on to can't hang on to that defensive solidity that they need to have, then perhaps starting Rolando might have helped. I don't know. It's hard to fault them. Athletic, they give anybody in Spain a run for their money playing at the San Mamés. There's no real shame in this. I don't know that you could say that Marseille necessarily weren't trying in this competition. I mean, I might have started Alessandrini, but I don't know that he could have necessarily put out a stronger team. I mean, putting Benjamin Mendy back into the side so soon after his return from injury, he's obviously trying to make a point to really push Bilbao on the flanks, and I wouldn't necessarily say that they played poorly. It just it's a tough loss to a European quality team.
It's a very good point, but I just want to finish this little talk about this. I had a quick look at the coefficient, and it's Portugal that are directly behind France at the moment in that coefficient. Luckily, Porto went out of the Europa League, but Braga went through. Pressure's on PSG now, isn't it, Philip, to get that win for France, especially with Benfica looking at one goal ahead against Zenit in the Champions League as well.
Yeah, and more on Zenit St. Petersburg to knock out Benfica.
Yeah, please.
Hopefully.
Come on, Andre.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, with all said and done, I mean, I do believe this is how the next couple of European campaigns are going to be like. PSG desperately wanting to do well in the Champions League and doing well in the Champions League, reaching the quarters, maybe the semis, something like that. And then you'll have a couple of French clubs who the luckiest will get through the group stage, the Champions League group stage, unless there's some serious investment being made, because it's the same everywhere. It's the same everywhere else. I mean, if you don't have a big investment being made on the squad, with big squads able to cope with European football, you're not expected to do well in European football, and you probably won't do that. So it's I think it's just the way the way it is at the moment. What Portugal does have on us on France is a much smaller league. Maybe a bit less pressure, because most teams like Braga are most of the time regarded as minnows, and the fact that we don't usually do well against Portuguese team in Europe. Actually, PSG used to lose to Benfica all the time before the Qatari takeover. No, it's changed a bit.
Well, they lost to Porto, 3 years ago in the group stage?
Yeah, but I'm thinking a bit more about Benfica winning against Benfica, 2 wins home and away or something like that. Whereas I think against Porto it was 1 defeat and 1 win. 1 defeat in Porto and the win at the Parc des Princes.
Well, it'll be
Yeah, I don't see it changing that much.
if Benfica get through, we'll just have to hope that PSG get through as well and get Benfica and then knock them out, and then
Yeah.
that might help the coefficient.
No,
Just a
I
little
can
bit.
see that. I mean, I can see that. But yeah, let's knock Chelsea out first. Would be
Yeah.
good.
I
Let's
think
get
if we're
past
going to
that
have this
first.
conversation, Russia needs to come into play here too.
Yeah.
Looking at Bert Cassie's website, France are on 52.08, Portugal are on 51.9, and Russia are on 51.08. So there's a spread of 1 ranking point amongst those 3 teams. And if Russian teams do well, and they didn't do very well in the Europa
No, I
League.
think all of them went out of the Europa League. I think.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
But if Zenit come back, I mean, there's really no winner in that tie for French football. If you want to look at it
Can
that way.
both go out? That's the argument at the moment.
Yeah.
Or can they be drawn with PSG in the next round? But we'll that's a conversation for another day. But we'll move on to Toulouse, who after a tough 2-1 loss in the final moments against Rennes, manager Dominique Arribagé has left his post. We'll mention this very quickly, Philip. But do you think that's the right move for him to step down from the club?
I think the pressure got to him. So I watched a press conference of Olivier Sadran, who is Toulouse chairman. So he owns the club, and I think he was basically taken aback by the resignation because it was a big game. It was Toulouse's biggest game. To me, we talked about it last week. They were already down. And they were 1-0 up against Rennes, going into extra time, into stoppage time, sorry. And after stoppage time, Rennes scored 2 goals, most of it from not shocking defending, but quite naive midfield play from the midfield. And Arribagé was just probably said, okay, well, I failed. I saved the club last season, but I can't save it this season, which is a shame really, because when Toulouse played at PSG in the cup, so Coupe de la Ligue and Coupe de France, I mean they looked decent. They looked decent defending. They scored a quite wonderful goal at the Parc des Princes. I think that was a Coupe de France game. I just saw some kind of talent, and this is why when you first asked me the question who's going down, I said Toulouse are not going to go down, but they are, because of that horrible string of results. Could only draw at home to Gazélec. They lost to Rennes at home. And I don't really, and I do fear actually for Toulouse. It's a club that really is struggling to exist in its own city because it's rugby territory, and Arribagé resigns, and Sadran basically does a whole press conference telling the journalists, you can ask me any questions, but he doesn't answer any of those questions. He says to the question, so has Arribagé left? He says, first of all, he says he doesn't answer the question, and then he says, yeah, he will stay within the club. Do you have a plan B? Who's going to be the next manager? Don't know. We have to. He says that Toulouse have to look out for the future of the club, but how? And he says, well, don't really know. The youngsters and stuff. Well, yeah, sure. That's a good strategy. Of course, it's a strategy that basically all Liga players, clubs, have. But right now, what Sador has to wish for is that Toulouse's academy is good enough for them to get promoted back to Liga next season, because this is where the club is going. There's absolutely no way he said that it wasn't mathematically done that Toulouse were going down, and he does have a point. There 10 games to go. They're 10 points from Reims. But if Arribagé left, it just or rather resigned because he's still at the club, it just goes to show you that everybody in the place know that it's already been done. Toulouse have a horrible fixture running. I think they're playing something ridiculous, like 7 of the top 10 in their last 10 games. So in the games coming through. So it really is a case of rebuilding for next season. Sell Ben Yedder, get 10 to 15 million. I'm sure they will get less than that, and give Youth its chance as they are doing right now. But now they have to do it in Ligue 2, and a lot of places are doing that. A lot of places, and we could have this conversation with Ligue 2 experts, and I'm not Ligue 2 expert, but I don't know if this will be enough in the long term. So I'm not quite disappointed.
Yeah,
I like to lose.
And just to bookend that, Ari Baget is understood to be returning to his position in recruitment with the club, and Canal Plus are reported, I think it was last night, it might have been the night before, that Francois Gillot is the favourite to come in to replace him. Interesting. Well, final topic for tonight. Montpellier are on a bit of a roll recently since hiring new manager Frederic Hans in late January. They've won 4 of the last 6, scored 13 over that period. Eric, how have they been? How impressive have the club been under their new boss so far?
I think really impressive. I mean, it's amazing how this team seemingly have gotten really solid performances from relatively unheralded players. I'm looking at the likes of Jérôme Roussillon. He's quietly become one of France's more impressive young fullbacks. William Remy, I think, has done well coming up from Ligue 2. Rami Bensebaini, I mean, he was basically an emergency arrival. He's played 20 matches, has looked relatively solid. You've got players coming back into fitness. The likes of Berigo, and Paulin and Morgan Sanson are still to come back. He's got this club really clicking. Casimir Ninga, they're playing a great, exciting, counterattacking style that I think goes really well. It plays to the club's strengths to have the fullbacks and versatile midfielders stretching opponents' play, and you've got Congre and Hilton keeping things solid at the back. And it's just been again, like we talked about with Nantes, it's been a really impressive team effort. I mean, you're getting goals from a lot of different sources. I mean, Yadabare's got 4, Kamara's got 5, Ninga has 6. But these strikers are not only no one's being the out and out source on a given week, but everybody's chipping in, and it's good to see it. I think that I have a bit of a soft spot for Montpellier, dating back to their winning the league and acquitting themselves, I thought, decently well in the Champions League, despite not progressing. And it's a team that I think has a lot of young and interesting, intriguing players, and they're a club that I was worried about relegation earlier in the season, but obviously that's not the case now. And if they can keep this team together and coax another year out of Hilton, I think they could be a dark horse for Europe next year on this type of form. A full season of Marvaux, a full season of Sanson. Boudabou seems to be hitting his stride a little bit more than he had been earlier in the season. There's a real chance that this team could be 6th or 7th come the end of the season next year.
Yeah, I think just to bookend that point about the squad improving, I think Boudabou has really grown into the season with Montpellier. I mean, he started pretty, I wouldn't say ridiculously poor. Yeah, average is perfect. Yeah, perfect. Average. He was leveling out very much at Montpellier at the start of the season, but he's really grown into that role of producing and creating for those forward players, and plenty of them have got goals through it. So credit to him for bouncing back into the form that we know he can really play at. But very briefly, Philip, have you been impressed by the run they've had under Hansen? There's no relegation worries now, really, is there?
No, but it was important that they got those 3 wins. Without those 3 wins, they would be on something like 26, which is lower than Ajaccio. And I think it does take a good manager to get the players in in their correct positions, plays a decent style, plays a good formation. With this 4-2-3-1, it just works. Birigo has been quite good and quite energetic. Budbuz is a creative force, and yes, it is extremely important to have Hilton at the back for them to marshal basically everyone. One thing I did notice that their game against Lille, it was the early kickoff on Saturday, was that you had first of all you had two creative players. You had Boudebouz on the one hand and Bouffal for Lille, but you also had two defensive stalwarts. You have Sivelli for Lille and Hilton for Montpellier. Sivelli went out injured, and basically the first goal they conceded was down to his replacement not defending very well. Hilton, on the other hand, had an absolutely outstanding game, and it just makes a difference. It just makes a world of difference, and sometimes that's a difference between conceding a late goal at home and winning 3-0, which is massive, which means that Montpellier will be in Ligue 1 next season, which is really what they were aiming at, despite losing Roland Courbis, because we did have our doubts about Montpellier once Courbis said he was not staying at the club. But now, 35 points with 10 games to go, never going to go down.
And then the doubts turned into Courbis until they managed to nick that win against Toulouse at the weekend. But I think that they will finish there, much like Paris Saint-Germain's unbeaten run. All good things must come to an end. And that's the end of our show this evening. My thanks to Eric and Philip, and to everyone listening at home this evening. A bientôt, and have a good night.